Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya, Om Namo Shivaya. Hello friends, Nayaswami Hriman here, and it's our weekday broadcast of the unpublished writings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Last week in my last broadcast, I talked a little bit about the events of the day, the events of our time right now with the invasion of the country of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. And I'm not sure I want to continue with that. Particularly, I made some remarks at my Sunday service talk yesterday at AnandaWashington.org, if you're interested. But it did prompt in me to go back to Yogananda's original writings on the prophecies of appeared rather dominantly, to a great degree, in the minds of the apostles. And I've heard one commentator in a documentary on the Acts of the Apostles, and I haven't validated it entirely with my own conscious mind research, but it has been said that whereas the apostles were thinking that Jesus was coming back very soon, since that didn't really happen, to change their tune, or at least their followers changed their tune, I'm not sure which. But in any case, it shows to me that not only how tricky and vague and difficult to interpret are prophecies to begin with, but how interpretations make it even worse. So I reread what Yogananda published November-December issue of his magazine, which at that point was called East-West, and it's called Jesus' Prophecies of War. This is in his series that he entitled The Second Coming of Christ. It breaks down into several parts, so bear with me. In Matthew 24, 1-2, Jesus and the disciples were passing by the Temple of Jerusalem, which at that point I think was quite an impressive compound and temple. And in fact, it intimates here that the disciples were rather taken with the appearance of the temple, like any good tourist. After all, they were from the lowly region of Judea, out of which others in Jerusalem would scorn nothing good comes from Judea. You know, it was kind of a pasteurized place, if you'll pardon a misuse of a word. And so his disciples, like foreign tourists anywhere, came to Jesus to show him the buildings of the temple. One imagined they were pretty excited. Wow, aren't those awesome? And Jesus, he put them down pretty quickly. He said to them, "See ye not these things? I say to you, there won't be one stone left upon another that won't be thrown down." Well, the disciples were taken aback, and so I assume it's on the same day, within an hour or so. They don't really say, but later it goes on to say, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, which I'm told, I haven't been to Jerusalem, but Mount of Olives sits opposite the city and probably had a good view of the temple also. The disciples came to him privately. So they were sitting up there, probably having their lunch, let's imagine, just for fun. And they said to him, "When will these things happen?" Basically, that this place will be destroyed. "And what will be the sign of thy coming?" Now, notice that. What will be the sign of thy coming? And of the end of the world. So they were asking three big questions. When will this temple be destroyed? When will you come back? Obviously alluding to other conversations they had. Because, just to say it, what I'm reading here is a continuation of Matthew 1 and 2. So obviously Jesus said what he said while looking at the temple, and then just as obviously happened a little bit later, they were sitting up on the Mount of Olives. But at that point, they asked these three big questions. When will the temple be destroyed? How will we know that you are returning, as you apparently have said before? And when will be the end of the world? Now, where they got that information, whether from Jesus or that's just how good Jewish boys used to think and talk, I don't really know. But Jesus answered them and said unto them, he said a lot of things that aren't directly on point to what I'm interested in, but don't let anyone deceive you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am Christ. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Don't be troubled, for these things must come to pass. And so he's referring to probably what Yogananda would say in his words, that this is the karma of this planet. We'll come back to that here in just a minute. For all these things must come to pass. Now here's a very important point. But the end is not yet. The end is not yet. Okay, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. And all these are the beginning of your sorrows. They'll deliver you up to be afflicted, kill you, hate you for my name's sake. Many will be offended, and some will betray one another and hate one another. False prophets will arise, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Boy, that sounds like today, doesn't it? But he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. Now, in the tradition of great prophets everywhere, they speak out of both sides of their mouth. They mix the present and the future and even the past in their various metaphors and similes. Just read the book of Revelations or Nostradamus. It's I won't say they do this on purpose to make us frustrated. It may be that the very vision, their mouths speak of that which is not in time or space, that may or may not happen, that perhaps has already happened or will happen in some other place. They're sort of tuning into something that, and using words, but words belie the reality of which the words attempt to describe. Okay. Kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. Now I'll show you in a minute how Yogananda interprets that. It's quite interesting. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Again, we'll come back to that. And then in parentheses, it says, whoso readeth, let him understand. So this is one of Jesus's buzzwords, his little way for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. This is one of the ways that Jesus is saying, go a little deeper. Use your intuition. For those who can understand what I mean. In other words, go beyond my words. Okay? At that time, let those who are in Judea flee in the mountains. If you're on the... He goes on and says, hey, this is bad times, dude. Get out of there. Except those days should be shortened, and there should be no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man say to you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it or not, for again, false Christ will arise. And so, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even to the west, so shall also the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. So, wow, that's a ton of stuff, ain't it? So let's see if I can tease out in a useful and efficient way what he's saying here. First off, Yogananda says Jesus answered the many questions, okay? Because they asked three huge questions, right? Two of his disciples in a masterly fashion. Again and again, he warned that even during their lifetime, there would be false prophets. and they must not pay any attention. He also saw that wars and rumors of wars would continue, and asked disciples not to lose the consciousness of their immortality, even when they witness such conflicts. And isn't that what we see today and in all the wars in the last, well, it doesn't matter what time, there's always wars, but the last 100 years, 2 world wars and a lot of other smaller important wars. In other words, during such times, it's when we especially need to affirm our immortality, our soul's immortality, our eternal nature. So he is not essentially linking the existence of wars with anything metaphysical, okay? He's just saying, hey, get over it. Those things may threaten you. You may be frightened, as are many people today. There's even talk of nuclear options and so forth. I just saw a little headline. And yeah, why not? It's very efficient, But this is when we must affirm our eternal nature. Now, here's where Yogananda goes on. Sorry if I'm taking a little bit of time, but too bad. He talks about the end of the world. So, the disciples asked him these 3 big questions. So now he segues, or I should say Yogananda segues into the question, when is the end of earth? Jesus knew that the end of the world would not come. The purpose for which the world was created, now listen up, would not be fulfilled so long as physical disturbances marred earth life. Continue listening. He intimated that earthly disturbances presuppose human imperfection. And as long as human beings continue to be imperfect, they will have to reincarnate on earth. Hence, as long as the reincarnation of souls continues on earth, so long as it has to exist, and it cannot come to an end. But when all souls are liberated by manifesting Christ consciousness, then these liberated peoples of the earth will be held in the bosom of God, and the swirling atoms of the uninhabited earth will be freed. Now, that's a ballpark, that's a grand slam, isn't it? Okay? All died when he said simply, but the end is not yet. He also referred to this later when he said, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. What is this gospel of the kingdom? It's so plain and simple. The kingdom, it's not limited to Jesus' teachings. The gospel of the kingdom of heaven is the teaching that we are not this body, that we are souls, and that our true kingdom, as Jesus said, this is not my kingdom, meaning the earth or an earthly kingdom. We are sparks of the infinite Christ, the infinite Lord, the infinite Spirit. Don't you see the deeper meaning here? It's just wonderful. This was another way of saying that only when all the peoples of the earth learn to follow the example of Christ-like saints, absorb their teachings, and manifest Christ consciousness, and could then be liberated, and then and only then the end of the world would come. That is the purpose of universal salvation for which the world was created. Being finished, the earth atoms would then be recalled to God. Wow. Okay. This explanation, now listen to this, stay with me now. This explanation, which Jesus Christ dropped into my consciousness, distinctly reveals the folly of many so-called prophets who, from time to time, announce the end of the world. Okay, then he goes on to talk about such a situation that happened in America, in New York, I guess during his years in America. We don't need to go to that. Wars and catastrophes. When Jesus said that nation would rise up against nation, he was simply foreseeing all the wars which the world has since witnessed. And then he goes on to name them and the different plagues and all the many earthquakes. I mean, gee whizzers. Now, maybe I'm jumping ahead of his words, but Yogananda's constant message around such things as natural calamities was always that natural calamities, catastrophes of a natural source or type, in other words, earthquakes and so on, are due to the imbalances and imperfections and negativity in the consciousness of human beings. Not just one human being, masses of human beings. He says that all of these things, he talks about the Great London Fire, the San Francisco and Chicago fires, which were, more present to people's consciousness in the first half of the 20th century, or the ravages of war, have been severe warnings sent from heaven to the people of earth, so that they might realize the uncertainty of life and change their ways. The accumulated evil actions of all the people of the earth are stored in the ether as hidden vibratory bombs, ready to explode in the form of natural or national, meaning war, or depression, economic depression, calamities. That these signs of wars and troubles are only the beginning of human troubles and miseries unless people reform their ways. Now, keep listening. At another time, Jesus said, "For he that hath, to him shall be given, and he that hath not, from him shall be taken even that which he hath." Now, that's a very deep teaching, and I've spoken of it in the words of Swami Kriyananda many times in the past. But here Yogananda says, and this applies so well to their earthly habits of civilizations. If the people, through their evil karmas, attract wars and miseries, such calamities will keep on multiplying. Whereas if they did not persistently create evil karma and miseries, even what little evils they might have would vanish. You've probably heard it said that during, I suppose it was World War II, there was a news article in the LA Times of an enormous windstorm that briefly but intensively attacked the city of Los Angeles. And up on Mount Washington, which sits above the city, you can imagine what that wind was like. Yogananda had one of his disciples there remove a shoe and tapped the shoe on one of the steps going up to the building, and he recited some mantra, and it instantly stopped. And the newspaper article apparently commented on the peculiarity of that. Yogananda's comment was that this evil wind was the result of the bad karma of the war. Let's see. All right. He told his disciples that they would be persecuted, and Yogananda goes on to, we know that they pretty much were all killed, except for John, who is John, the beloved disciple, was nearly boiled to death and then sent to Patmos in exile. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened, promised Jesus. Then and today, if anyone had to pay all the karma accrued through incarnations, there should no flesh be saved. Oh, I see what he's saying. In other words, if you or I had to, in one incarnation, pay for all of the karma of our past incarnations, all of us on this planet would perish. But he says, even if true devotees have some past seeds of evil actions in them, they will find that because of their virtue and the grace of God, much of their karma is worked out and the term of suffering lessened. Okay, second coming. Last of all, boy, I know I'm in overtime, can't help be helped. Jesus said, "For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." He did not intend to signify, Yogananda writes, a future incarnation for himself, but to say that the Christ consciousness already manifest in the body of Jesus and in everyone's body was a great light which in time would dazzle the world from east to west, not outwardly, but people within themselves, east to west. And that just as eagles from afar locate a corpse and gather around it, so the people from far parts of the earth would sense a filling repast in his teachings and gather about them. So, I'm just going to end this because it's late. I often lament that although Jesus was crucified once, his teachings are crucified all the time. Surely the time has come to stop the true Christ teachings from being crucified by theological misunderstandings. These pristine teachings must be resurrected from the tomb of dogmatism. Okay, I'm just going to have to end there, but I found that very interesting. The world isn't going to come to an end anytime soon until we all achieve liberation or some such thing. I'm not sure what to think about that, but in any case, it's not going to end now, even with today's troubles. And today's troubles there are to remind us wherein liveth our true nature, our true soul. It's a reminder that we are not of this world. We are of spirit. And it's a reminder to go within and seek our salvation there. That is the hope for a better world, is that we all find that truth and become free. And then the earth itself will be free of misery. All right, great souls. Sorry to keep you so long if you stayed this far. Gotta go.